Yarra Council. Now, you're very, very happy if you don't live there. And if you're thinking of going to live there, can I give you some advice? Don't. If you thought they couldn't get more woke, have a listen to this. So Yarra Council had a meeting this week and they're pushing for the residents of Yarra Councils, places like North Fitzroy and Collingwood, Abbotsford, those sort of places in inner Melbourne, to act on the climate emergency. So the council thinks it can fix global warming by itself. And they want their residents to move toward a vegetarian diet using active and public transport. I think that means ride a bike or catch tram, and shifting their banking away from fossil fuel investments. The council also looked to traditional Aboriginal land management. These places are full of concrete roads, buildings, cheap public housing. They want to use management practices by Indigenous Australians to, and I don't know what this means, decolonise the urban landscape. I'm not making it up. Let's bring in tonight's panel. Joining me is Stepmate Studios founder Mark Nicholson. He joins Mark Kenny on a regular basis, plus Daily Telegraph journalist Tim Blair. Tim, you ever been to Yarra Council area, mate?
Mate, I used to live in Yarra Council for quite a long time, various places in Collingwood, Richmond, North Fitzroy. Then I decolonised myself from the area. But this is fascinating. If they are legitimately talking about introducing Aboriginal land practices, well, maybe that's a good thing for that area. I mean, maybe we'll see some backburning. That wouldn't go down too well with people who've got their $2 million properties in the area. It's not a cheap place to live these days.
No, it isn't. Mark, you are in Melbourne. You would travel through that part of the city. I was there last week. I had to drop someone off in Smith Street, Collingwood. The joint's covered in graffiti, mate. It looks like a dump.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. Well, you've rattled me, Steve. I'm not just a resident of the city of Yarra. I'm a ratepayer of the city of Yarra. So there's a lot of us that are walking around the neighbourhood today just going, what are they vaping at Town Hall at the moment to come up with this ridiculous policy? It's and for a pack of progressives, this might be the most regressive policy I've ever seen. They literally want to tear down the foundations of what we've got and destroy it all. And you're right, it's covered in graffiti. There's needles everywhere because of that safe injecting room in Richmond. I've got a fortnightly bin pickup, which is infuriating the residents, let me tell you that. There's a lot of issues in the city of Yarra, but handballing, because all this is just consulting off to Indigenous groups at this point. So that what they're doing is just handballing accountability and responsibility to those people while they can appease the handful of lefty wokists that are annoying the councillors on a weekly basis for not doing enough about the climate emergency, whatever that might mean.
I expect you're going to ride your bike home tonight and have a mung bean stew for dinner. Is that on the go?
It's a classic way to enjoy your Thursday night, Steve, of course. It's a classic.
Fantastic. Don't have a beer on the way home either. That's not allowed. Tim, I read your column in the Telegraph today. This nonsense about renaming everything with an Indigenous name. It started with Cooks River. I mentioned it on the show last night. There's a proposal to rename it Gulayari. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. A big article by you today. And I think you stole the idea from me because I mentioned last night the ridiculous AFL round where every team had an Indigenous name and no one knew who was playing who and where.
Yeah, and I noticed that the AFL's description of that round, the Nichols round, is that they claim that whatever the words they came up with for Port Adelaide were a literal translation, because of course you would have had prior to settlement you would have had a word for port. There would have been words regarding shipping and so on, and trade. It's insulting to Aboriginal Australians as well, this sort of thing, because it's so tokenistic and so fake and so pretendy. I mean, the name that they want to introduce for Cooks River, the name that you and everyone else would struggle to pronounce when we first see it, it includes an apostrophe, for God's sake. It's like some sort of posh pommy surname or something. It's not reflective at all of the culture they're trying to boost, but are actually insulting, I think, mate.
And look, I had the pleasure when I was a young reporter in South Australia. I went and interviewed Sir Doug Nicholls because he became the governor of South Australia. He had a little silver making workshop in the back of Government House. He was the nicest bloke you could ever meet, champion footballer, and was never whinging about anything to do with the fact that his life had been dreadful. There he was in Government House, all dressed up, having a wonderful time. Let's turn our attention to another great Australian, our old mate Malcolm Turnbull. Now, he turned up on my other TV show, The Project, earlier in the week and made some comments about Peter Dutton. Here's what the great Malcolm had to say.
Well, he's a thug. Peter's got one tune that he plays. I mean, it's been all his political life, and that is division and animosity.
Now, if you're called a thug, you'd think you'd fight back, but Peter Dutton has turned into a nice bloke now. I don't know if that's going to help him in the election or not. He went on 2GB with our old mate Ray Hadley. Here's what he had to say about Mr Turnbull.
I just think people can see through it, and I wish him the best. I think he diminishes himself by making these comments. Malcolm's got an axe to grind. I think it's sad.
Mark, has Malcolm ever featured in your cartoon series?
He has, yeah, as the man from Snowy Hydro, because as we uncovered last week as well on the show about the super funds and the unions funneling money back to the Labor Party for green energy, that actually talks a lot about why Malcolm got in front of the project and decided to call Peter a thug. One, he's angry, of course, because Peter was the reason for the big spill that got rid of him out of the top job. But then, of course, he's got a lot of interest in pump hydro and renewables as well. So by going down this nuclear path, it absolutely hits him where it hurts the most, which is his hip pocket. But yeah, this is just real catty and petty sort of discourse from Malcolm Turnbull. It's very odd because Peter Dutton, he doesn't seem like a thug. Even his response wasn't a thug. He's like a copper. He's not even like one of those street cops that would beat you up and take the money that should have been evidence and put it in his pocket. He's like one of those like straight-laced goody two-shoe cops. He's kind of boring and vanilla. I don't get it.
Every time I've ever met Malcolm, he's told me how wonderful a bloke he is. So, you know, that makes no sense, Malcolm Turnbull, most of the time. But he does tell you he's the smartest bloke in the room. Tim, I had Pauline Hanson on the program last night. Boy, it was entertaining viewing. She was in Maryborough, Queensland, out the front of some museum. She was told by council staff, hey, you can't stand next to a statue of Mary Poppins because Mary Poppins is apolitical. Have a look at this.
A staffer came from the council and told me that I can't film here next to Mary Poppins because they're apolitical, and told me I shouldn't be here. I told them, get lost, I'm doing the interview here. And I thought, I'm sick and tired of being bullied around. I'm sick and tired of these people. This is the second time today, Steve.
Fantastic, Tim.
Well, Senator Hanson is obviously unaware of the long-established Queensland rule about Mary Poppins proximity interviews. You can't be within 5 metres of any statue of the famous fictional character, otherwise it's verbatim. By the way,
I tell you what, that was the best piece of television I've ever been involved in. I thought she was fantastic. Mark and Tim, great to catch up with you both. Thank you very much for tonight.